What's going on, everyone? Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres with Scoop Duck on 3, coming to you on Tuesday, June 24th, 2025, from Long Beach, California. Got an action packed episode of the podcast for you guys today. We're going to talk about Ryder Lyons committing to BYU, where Oregon goes from here at the quarterback position in the 2026 cycle. And then Oregon's final official visit weekend of the summer. There were some huge names on campus, and I've been working the phones, getting updates, getting scoop, and we want to dive into some of that here. But I'm not rolling solo. Joining me to break it all down is Scoop Duck owner and publisher Justin Hopkins. J-Hop, how the heck are you?
Pretty good. The sun's out today, and I think I'm gonna have like a pool barbecue at my buddy's house later. So looking forward to that, sitting in the sun a little bit, and I think I'm doing better than most Ducks fans that are, just kind of reeling from, maybe Richard Wesley coming off the board and Ryder Lyons going to BYU, stuff we're going to talk about. But you know what? The sun is still shining. The grass is still damn green in Eugene, Oregon, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think it definitely is still green in Eugene, and then sounds like you're going to be enjoying some summer vibes up there in Oregon yourself. So that'll be a fun time. But man, yeah, we have to lead off the show with Ryder Lyons. That's the biggest news of the day. You and I both had our picks on Oregon for a while there, and then we ended up switching them to BYU because that was where the intel was pointing. And what do you know? Tuesday morning, it's BYU. So kind of what were your reactions to Lions picking BYU, and where do you kind of start here with where Oregon goes?
Yeah, I mean, for starters, I want to say this, there's, talk about picks and predictions and flipping them and stuff like that. At the end of the day, your job and my job is to follow the news and try to stay on top of the news and give everybody the latest. Sometimes it's good news and sometimes it's bad news. We don't dictate that. We just relay it. So, I see people talking about, oh, you shouldn't flip your picks right before or whatever. And, it's just like, that's our job. I mean, if you got a real estate broker or you've got a financial broker that you buy your stocks from, and they're telling you, hey, the market's going to go up or the market's going to go down tomorrow, you're going to follow that news. That's right. So that's all we're doing. Ryder Lyons, frustrating. Like, I think I've said this already. I'm going to repeat it. I'm not worried about quarterback recruiting. I really am not concerned if Oregon signs any commits at quarterback in this class or none. I understand folks want to get rid of the, we shouldn't just rely on transfers at quarterback. Well, like I'm kind of like a proof kind of guy. Like the proof is in the pudding, right? I mean, the last two transfers have worked out pretty well for Oregon. And so why would you deviate from that just for the sake of deviating from that? I'm on a long tangent that's away from Ryder Lyons. Ryder Lyons is an LDS kid, BYU. Okay, makes sense, right? It makes sense to me that he went to BYU. Oregon had a lot to offer. I think Oregon made a compelling offer, great offense. We all know that. Oregon had a lot to offer. But an LDS kid picking BYU doesn't scream panic to me. Now, isolated, that's not a very big deal, but I understand it's different because Ryder Lyons is like example number 10 of Oregon missing on guys they've been targeting. So I understand the frustration there. But if I'm able to kind of remove myself and isolate Ryder Lyons going to BYU, hey, good get for them. He's a good player. LDS kid going to BYU. I see no fault here. I understand it all. And again, I'm still not concerned about quarterback recruiting for Oregon because I don't care if they lean on a transfer. Like, I'm not saying they will, but if they do, you know what you're going to get in a transfer quarterback. The guy's going to show up and you know what he does at the collegiate level already. The film is there. Like it's almost so anyways, but yeah, another miss by Oregon. I understand that it's almost becoming a really bad running joke at this point. Oregon's still going to be fine.
When I look at the Ryder Lyons situation, I echo basically everything that you said. I mean, the dude's an absolute stud. He's a baller. He was my favorite quarterback in the 26 class, other than Jaden O'Neal, who flipped from Oklahoma to Florida State earlier, not this week, but recently. And the thing for me, Justin, like you were talking about with LDS kids and BYU, like I was talking to somebody when I was making calls before I put my pick in for BYU, and I kind of was getting a little bit of a vibe like KDW to Ohio State, right? Caden Dixon Wyatt, like Oregon landing a receiver that Ohio State truly wants and covets, like, I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but after that happened, I was kind of like, I don't think I'm going to do that again. I'm not going to predict a receiver that Ohio State wants to go to Oregon until it happens. Like, I'll wait for it to happen before I do that. And again, like, my sources were telling me, like, I didn't just put that pick out there for no reason when I did predict KDW to Oregon, but now I'm kind of finding myself in a similar situation, right? I remember very clearly McKay Madsen's recruitment in the 2025 class, the linebacker running back from Clovis, California. I was taken off from San Antonio as he was making his decision. I was live streaming it on my phone, and he didn't pick up the Oregon hat. He picked up the BYU hat, and here we are again. An LDS kid picks BYU over Oregon. That's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes, and it's like, it's kind of, in some respects, it was Oregon going against the church, right? And that level, that layer of the recruitment, and that's just kind of where the Ducks find themselves now. BYU obviously looks like they kind of have a renewed prioritization or effort in recruiting top football talent. We saw what they did with I can't remember the guy's name, like AJ something for the top basketball recruit, and now that's kind of trickling over into football. So it stings for sure, but I think Oregon's going to be just fine, like you just said. And to just go a little bit deeper down this, when you were talking about the transfer stuff right at quarterback, and I know a lot of fans want to see a quote unquote homegrown guy. That's just not the reality at a majority of the top college football programs. I want to see a homegrown guy too. Like, that is a good story. It's fun to watch. It's great to talk about if you're a college football fan. Like, oh, my program doesn't have to rely on the portal. We have a guy that's been here for 3 or 4 years, whatever it might be. And I kind of almost liken it to the Lanning hire, because a lot of people wanted the Ducks to go out, wanted Rob Mullins to go out and get an Oregon guy. And Rob Mullins had to kind of push the envelope and see where the sport was going and take a chance on Dan Lanning, who isn't an Oregon guy and was an SEC guy. So I'm not really sure if those two situations like really connect, but I think that kind of makes a lot of sense. Like, I want to see a high school guy, just like a lot of you guys listening to and watching this, but that's where the sport's going. Most schools that win national championships of late have a transfer quarterback, and Oregon has shown that they're going to do what they can to adapt.
Yeah, I think if I recall correctly, I think out of the final 4 teams in college football last year, 3 of them had transfer quarterbacks that were vying for a national championship. Like, it's just, I mean, here's what it boils down to. People fear change. Like, and I'm not just talking about college football. Most people do not like change. And we're seeing college football change at just an accelerated level, like more massive changes than we've ever seen in literally like 2 years. And so we're trying to figure it out, all of us. And the fun part is our jobs aren't on the line, yours and mine and the people that read our stuff. Our jobs aren't on the line. Rob Mullins, his job's on the line. Dan Lanning, his job's on the line. Those guys have to get it right, or else it severely impacts them. We don't. They also have way more information at their disposal than we do. So on some level, you do have to just kind of like stuff it down and be like, all right, I got to trust Dan and Marshall and Rob Mullins and those guys, that they know what they're doing, that they know. Like, let's be real. Could Oregon have gotten into a bidding war for Ryder Lyons with BYU? Yeah, they could have. They could get in a bidding war for anybody if they want to. I mean, it's pretty clear right now that, there's a lot of decisions being made by recruits with NIL being at the forefront right now. And so you just have to kind of see, like, all right, is it smart for us to jump in this race with all those other teams too? Or should we kind of sit back and see, maybe take a gander at it again in September, October, November, and see, if that's the time for us to make a move. And I think that's what Oregon's wanting to do. And yeah, Ryder Lyons, again, like you said, KDW going to Ohio State made sense. I mean, why wouldn't a receiver go to Ohio State? I could never fault him for that. Even taking it back to Jackson Cantwell, he went to Miami. Like, I know that people don't like Mario And Miami is whatever Miami is. But he went to a place where the head coach is an offensive line coach who has another, trusted offensive line coach that's been with him forever. I don't fault an offensive lineman for making that choice. Now, if you're a high-profile quarterback, why you would go to Miami, I have absolutely no idea. But, an offensive –
That's another story.
Yeah, but some of these, when you take a step back and remove yourself from the emotion, they kind of make sense. Like, okay, yeah, maybe Miami paid him more than everybody, but it's still not like that was a terrible decision. If you're not keeping track, in the last week or so, a couple days, Ohio State missed out on a couple targets to Nebraska. That should never happen. Tell me why that happened. What's one reason that would happen? Okay, NIL is becoming a big thing. Schools are either deciding that they're just going to push in their chips before all this legislation takes place. People have gone and found ways to get this money. They're planning on using some of their revenue share for it. We don't know. Every situation's probably different, right? It's not just one reason. And I think that's what everybody gets fixated on. Like, what is it? It's one reason. I don't think it's one reason. I think it's several reasons. And I just outlined a few of them. And I'm sure there's certainly more. So let's take it all in stride. It hasn't been good. And I'm not sugarcoating that. You're not sugarcoating that. Neither of us are. It hasn't been great for the basically 6 months this year. I still, for whatever reason, not for whatever reason, I know why, I still have total faith in Dan Lanning and Marshall Malco to get it right. And the only problem with that is it takes patience. And not many people have that anymore.
Yeah, and I think we're in the same boat. Like, we trust this Oregon staff to get it right, but timing's a factor, and people want it right now. And that's not the world that we're living in, at least not the way that Oregon's operating. So I think that listening to you, I was like, we got to do a whole separate pod just on the NIL impact on recruiting, because like we could just go down that rabbit hole. The last thing I'll just say on that real quick, and then we're going to get to where Oregon goes at quarterback from here. I asked Jet Washington, new Oregon 5-star commit. Oregon got a 5-star. Don't forget that with the way everything is going. I asked him, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something along the lines of like, what's a misconception about recruiting, or what's something with recruiting that people don't know? And he was saying like, people think that, we recruits are just out there choosing schools for NIL. Like, that's not always the reason. So you can read that over on Scoop Duck if you want. Covered the heck out of that commitment. I think really, really did a good job. We did crushed it over there. So check it out. But now, Justin, we got to talk about, go for it.
I just think that's such a good point, because I think that applies to a lot of recruits, but not all recruits, and I'm not saying that everybody Oregon gets, they were the cheapest offer for. That's not fair. That's not what you or I are saying. But I think if you look at Oregon and you look at Ohio State and you look at Georgia, 3 high-level recruiting programs, all 3 of them are recruiting well, but none of them are recruiting at a USC level, right? Like, I know that we like to pick on USC. What does USC have to offer right now that those 3 schools don't? I mean, the answer's got to be pretty clear, right? I mean, they're throwing money around and landing really good recruits. I'm not mad about that. That's the game. Like, they're choosing to make these bigger offers now and rolling the dice that way. I don't know that they're wrong. I don't know that Oregon's right and that they're wrong, but that's the way they're playing the game. And I think Georgia, Ohio State, or you look at those 3 and they're kind of playing, and even to a degree in Alabama, like, I don't think those 4 programs are just like, hey, let's throw the money at them and let's get them. I think they're all having a little bit more of a reserved approach. If you look at Ohio State, yeah, they didn't get Chris Henry Jr. for free, right? They didn't. They made probably a fair offer. Might not have even been the biggest offer. I would almost guarantee they're not the biggest offer. And you can get away with that when you're Ohio State recruiting wide receivers, because look at what they do with wide receivers.
And they just won the national championship. Don't forget that.
Yeah, the Saban discount's real. Like, Alabama was getting a Saban discount. They no longer get that. So they're trying to figure that out. I think Kirby Smart, I think Oregon had a bigger offer on the table for Jared Curtis, and I think he went to Georgia. And I think Kirby, even though he's not really a quarterback guy, he's winning championships. That kid's going to be in the limelight, right? I don't totally fault him. I think Oregon's offense is better, but that's besides the point. There's a lot of other things in it too. But, Kirby gets a little bit of a Kirby discount. Ryan Day is going to start getting a Ryan Day discount because of what he does. I think Oregon gets a little bit of a Dan Lanning discount. They didn't get Jet Washington for free, but I'm not necessarily certain that they were his biggest offer on the table. In fact, I'm certain they're not. it's all relative. You got to take, everybody wants to focus up. We lost a recruit. We suck. Like, okay, let's look at all these other things that you and I just spent 15 minutes talking about on basically why Ryder Lyons went to BYU. But it's really good conversation and it's good discussion.
It's good discussion, no doubt. But let's get into what's next for Oregon at the quarterback spot. It was funny. I was writing this story on Scoop Duck right before we hopped on, Justin. I was like, I don't really know if I have that much to say. And then it ended up being like almost 1,000 words. So that just goes to show you how crazy recruiting is right now. But really, there's two names that we got to talk about with Oregon at the quarterback spot here in 26. And we'll start with Bryson Beaver, Elite 11 finalist. Probably one of those guys that, I mean, he was one of those guys that rose his stock the most from a really good week out there in Los Angeles at the Elite 11 finals. He took his official visit to Oregon this past weekend, and Ole Miss looks like the biggest competitor right now. But LSU just offered, Auburn just offered. I've been telling our readers to keep an eye out for Ohio State. We have to see what happens with them. And Luke Fahey, he just got offered, and that was a huge like dream school of his, along with Oregon, growing up. But I mean, everything that Beaver told me, and you know, kind of talking to some people that were around this recruitment, this visit this weekend. Oregon did a great job. You know, they showed him what he can do at Oregon and got great connection with Will Stein, got on the whiteboard, spent hours in meetings, just kind of breaking down his game and their plan for him. So Oregon did everything they could, I think, to ultimately move into the lead. But the question now, the wild card that I wrote about, Justin, is timing. I think that he wants to take more visits. And, you know, he and his family kind of feel like they owe it to themselves and to these schools that are going after him following his Boise State decommitment to check him out. But the problem is we're in a dead period now, and he wants to decide before his senior season. So that's kind of where this one's at right now.
Yeah, rewind that. Can you rewind that last clip? Because This is what I want to. The next one's not bad either. But what do you want to look at here? Go ahead and go back to the beginning of that last one. This one. This is the play I want. But you got to, and if you're on YouTube and you're watching this, just look at this kid's arm strength. I mean, he literally just whips that ball into a window. I mean, it's absolutely on a rope. And that's one of the things that, you know, folks around the Elite 11 that were at Elite 11, I know you were one of them, you know, really were like, man, this kid's impressive. He's got, you know, elite arm strength. Obviously, they couldn't really see his running ability because that's not what the Elite 11 is about. But you're watching this film here and seeing the way he moves around the pocket or takes off and runs. I mean, this kid, there's a lot to like about his film. So, you know, I think Oregon is in a position where, you know, they might find themselves really fortunate to end up with this kid if that's the case. And like you said, it now becomes a question of, you know, does he take this into it? Here's the part. He's going to have to take this into his senior year. He's going to have to now go through his senior season, taking visits and talking to multiple schools if he decides not to make his commitment. And that's a pretty big thing. You know, a lot of these guys like to, you know, be done with this, put it behind them. You know, occasionally you'll hear a couple kids maybe talk to a couple of schools, which you can keep manageable. But, you know, if this kid keeps things open, his phone's going to ring pretty consistently. And that's a pretty big distraction for a quarterback that I'm sure wants to go and, you know, win a state title in his final season. So that's the rub. I mean, you nailed it. There's really nothing else to this recruitment. I think Oregon leads right now, and I think Oregon will get him if he makes a summer decision. If he delays this thing, there's two things. Oregon might not end up with him because other schools might do a better job recruiting him or make a bigger offer or whatever the case might be. And secondly, because of the guy we're about to talk about next, who seems a lot closer to making a decision. So, I mean, that's the rub. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Again, overarching theme for me, I'm still totally fine if Oregon doesn't get either one of them. Like, seriously. Like, it'd be great if they got one. I'm still okay if they don't get either one. If they miss on Emmanuel Ihanacho, I've got a bigger problem.
No, I definitely agree with where you're at there. And the last thing I'll add on Beaver is like he's this year's JKS, Jaren Kiave Sangapolotele, who rose to 5-star status, was almost a virtual unknown before last year's Elite 11 finals, and then just absolutely exploded. We all know how the rest of the story went after that, so we don't need to talk about it. But the next quarterback we're going to talk about, Matt Ponatoski out of Cincinnati, Ohio, Archbishop Moeller. He was at the Elite 11 finals as well, and he's got a top group of Arkansas, Alabama, Kentucky, and Oregon. He took official visits to all of those schools. Oregon's OV came this last weekend. The interesting wrinkle here is that his officials to Kentucky and Arkansas were for baseball, and then he took unofficial visits out there to both of those schools for the football side of things. And Ponatoski doesn't have a decision date, but I talked to him yesterday, and it sounds like he plans to take a trip out to Georgia for some baseball. Not the state, just the state of Georgia, not UGA. And then kind of after that, probably go into decision mode. It could come before that, but he was like, I don't really know if I want to do this while I'm out of town, which I totally understand. So like, I think we're looking at weeks for maybe even days for Matt Ponatoski. And the crazy thing here with his recruitment, obviously we know he's a baseball guy as well, dual sport star, legit MLB draft potential, wants to play both sports at his college of choice. But like, I really thought that this was a guy who just kind of wanted to go check out Oregon, and in the best way. And I don't mean this to speak poorly of him. Like, I have no doubt that there are recruits out there that just want to check out Oregon, and they go, and then they don't end up going there like that. But like, that's a risk you take as a staff. Like, I think Oregon is very strategic as far as we don't host, like Oregon doesn't host a guy. I'm talking like I'm on the staff, but I'm not, obviously. Oregon doesn't want to host a guy unless they feel like they have a legit shot. And I think they feel like they have a legit shot. That was the case before, and I think that's the case now coming out of this visit. But Ponatoski said in the interview, which is over on Scoop Duck, you guys got to check it out, he was kind of saying before the visit, like, it's kind of questionable, it's far away. And then he got to hear, their evaluation of him and like just how badly they want him. And seeing and hearing that in person is different than just over the phone. Like, that was a really cool wrinkle with his recruitment. So coming out of the visit, I don't quite think that Oregon leads, but admittedly, this one is a little bit more complicated than other recruitments. I like their chances better with Beaver, but by no means, Justin, especially now that Ryder Lyons is off the table. I'm not ready to count Oregon out here.
Yeah, it like I said a moment ago, and I'll add to it now, this really just becomes just quarterback recruiting has become quite the wrinkle, right? Because once Oregon missed on Jared Curtis, basically Oregon let Jonas Williams go, pursued Jared Curtis. And once that happened and Jared Curtis picked UGA, this all became a massive wild card, right? All of a sudden, Bryson Beaver pops up, and now, Oregon's in consideration. Matt Ponatoski pops up, Oregon's in consideration. Beaver's a late bloomer. So does he take it take it longer into, his recruitment, or does he wrap things up soon? Part of that's going to be what Matt Ponatoski does. Because like you said, if Ponatoski makes his decision within, we'll just say the next 2 weeks, something like that, does Bryson Beaver still have a spot after that? If he remains on the board, does Oregon take Ponatoski, say we're done, and call it good? You also, if you end up with Ponatoski, like you said, there's a lot of wrinkles to his recruitment. He's a baseball guy. He could go to the MLB draft. He could never play a snap of college quarterback. You could be Oregon. You could sign him, and he could never step foot on your campus at all and play a snap for you. So again, all those things, you have no control over what the future is going to be. I don't know what it's going to be. Dan Lanning doesn't know what it's going to be. And again, if Oregon missed on both of them, I'm still going to be okay at the end of the day, because I tell you what, they'll go get another transfer if they need to, and that guy will probably be up for Heisman consideration. You're going to tell me right now, as an Oregon fan, that you are so set that you want them to go get a prep guy just so they can develop him to see what he becomes, over basically the high percentages they can go get one of the best transfer portal quarterbacks in the game and make them a Heisman contender. You tell me which one you want, okay? What makes more sense here? Okay, so that's my point with quarterback recruiting. Great if they get one, not a problem if they don't. I'm still not concerned. Ponatoski's a really good player. I think, like you said, I think you were maybe alluding to it. It feels like maybe it's Kentucky versus Oregon, maybe Alabama lurking a little bit. I don't know. That feels like the major match here. And yeah, I know what the response can be. Well, it's Kentucky. Yeah, Kentucky's really good at baseball. Like right now, traditionally, Kentucky's a blue blood in terms of baseball. So I totally can't fault that. He might really consider Kentucky. Not to mention it's also about 2,500 miles closer to home for him as well. So
you can tell J-Hub's getting fired up when he's hitting on the keyboard, but no, it's definitely I mean, we just talked about that before we got to talking about both of these guys, so I totally understand. But yeah, I think that we've kind of hit on both of these guys. I know we wanted to get to a little bit more from the OV weekend, so we're just going to kind of segue into that a little bit because there were some other big names on campus. I don't think any of them were bigger than 5-star plus offensive tackle Emmanuel Ahenicho. He took his final official visit to Oregon. Got some killer quotes from him over on Scoop Duck, so make sure you guys watch that interview. We got interviews. Read that interview. We got interviews from every official visitor, I believe, either from myself or Chad Simmons or Steve Wiltfong, which is why we are the place to be for Oregon football recruiting. You got to check us out. But the big takeaway from that one, Ahenicho called Oregon his leader before the official visits. Now they're still his leader. He said that this official visit only strengthened it. He was joined by his entire family on the trip. His younger brother, who's a 2028 offensive tackle, got the Oregon offer as well. I'm sure that was kind of something to maybe sweeten the deal a little bit. Who even knows if they would play together at Oregon, because Ahenicho is probably on the fast track to the NFL. But this is the name for Oregon at offensive line this cycle for Alik Terry. The staff's done a tremendous job. Haven't gotten him out to campus quite as much as you'd maybe like to if you're an Oregon fan, but they have gone out to Baltimore to see him and gotten just as much FaceTime as they possibly can. I mean, the relationship with Alik Terry is definitely there. The opportunity, the path to some early playing time, not that it's going to be handed to him, but that's certainly there as well. So it seems like he's going to be open to moving up his decision, which was originally set for August 5th, I believe. So I mean, just every sign coming out of this visit screams Oregon, Justin. By no means is he a slam dunk, but I think I'm probably going to put my prediction in for him finally.
Yeah, 5 stars, from 3,000 miles away are never a slam dunk, but this one feels about as close as it can get. Now, what I just said a moment ago about quarterback recruiting, 1,000% does not apply to offensive line recruiting. Like, I'm okay if Oregon doesn't sign a quarterback. I'm not okay if Oregon doesn't sign some offensive linemen, and not just any offensive lineman. They need a Nacho. They need, maybe a Tommy Tofi. Some of these, higher caliber guys Oregon must get in this cycle. So there will be no sugarcoating from me if Oregon misses on Ahenicho and some of their other, upper offensive line targets. So I don't have a lot more to add on Nacho. Like you said, heading into the visit, he was clear Oregon was the leader. Coming out of the visit, Oregon was the leader. I think distance was maybe a hurdle for mom and dad, and it sounds like that got handled pretty well during this visit. They were able to come. I think that was the major concern and probably the last hurdle, and it sounds like that was overcome. So I'm with you. I would be pleased as punch if this was Oregon's next commit, and I do think that this one probably pops within the month of July.
Yeah, and the other thing too with Ahenicho, like we've talked at length about all the misses for Oregon this cycle. Like, you're not taking all those misses if you're Oregon, and if you're not behind the scenes and saying, hey, this is a guy that if we can get him, we are going to go get him. Like, we are going to do whatever it takes. We're going to be competitive in the NIL space. Like, Emmanuel Ahenicho is one of the biggest names circled at the top of this staff's board. So I mean, they're going to be battling tooth and nail to get that one done. LSU seems like the biggest threat right now. And I just like Oregon's chances to get this one done. They've been sending a lot of linemen out to the NFL as well. I mean, that of course helps them. But like, aside from Jackson Cantwell, like, I don't think there's a bigger offensive lineman in this class, like physically. Like, Emmanuel might be larger. He's like 6'6", 6'7". He's listed on On3 at like 370 or 360, I think. Looking at it right now, 6'7", 380. Like, that is insane. But yeah, I think that we've kind of spoken enough about Emmanuel. I think Oregon only helped themselves coming out of this weekend with their top offensive line target. But Justin, let's stay on the offensive line because we got a little bit of a surprise visitor this past weekend. And that is Farrington, offensive lineman, Kaloy Kelly. He's a 3-star guy out of Honolulu, the same school as Poncho Laulaulu, the current Oregon center. He's committed to Cal, only committed to Cal earlier this month, but interview with him is also posted over on Scoop Duck, and it looks like Oregon's got a really good chance here to pull off a flip. I know that he told me he wants to kind of figure things out before his senior season gets here. And that was a visit that maybe fans aren't like over the moon about. I know people on our boards are saying the fact that we even have to flip a guy from Cal is like just sums everything up or something like that. But everything that I've been told about Khalid Kelly is that he's the next Poncho in Oregon's eyes. And, maybe he doesn't pass the height, weight, speed kind of combo, but this is going to be a damn good player at the college level.
Yeah, and I think it solves what has now become a current center problem. And I think that's what you're alluding to there is, this guy has capability to play center. And with, the Kalani Valu situation, him ending up at BYU, even though he's going to take a mission, this kind of solves that. I know Jax Tanner's another guy Oregon's been recruiting who could play center, but you talk about another guy that's going to take a mission. So this becomes a really important recruitment, not because he's so highly ranked. I think you do need to get 4 to 5 offensive linemen in this class if you're Oregon, and it's going to be really important to hit all 3 positions in my opinion. And secondly, they're not all going to be 5 stars. Like if you think that this offensive line group of 4 to 5 guys is just going to all be 4 and 5 stars, it's probably not fair. You do need some top heavy guys. You do need a Nacho. You need a Tommy Tofi, maybe a Kelvin Obot. You need some dudes. But taking, maybe a guy like Kelly here, who's maybe a slight bit more developmental, but also fits a need at center. Center's a huge problem. Oregon really needs to find a guy, and it feels like they possibly have here. So, I like this late development, like that Oregon was able to get him on campus. One thing to keep in mind is the islands of Hawaii typically start football earlier than we do here stateside. So their seasons will kick off in August at some point. I don't have an exact date, but I do know it's earlier than football's played here in the States. So if that's the case, you're probably looking at another guy that's making a decision within the next 3 to 5 weeks at worst.
Yeah, that's a good point for sure. And Oregon's got a great history with Hawaii players. Obviously, I know that was the Polynesian pipeline was part of what drew him to Cal in the interview. So this is going to be one to keep tabs on, without a doubt, Justin. But there's so much more we could get into from this weekend. But I know we went a little long with the NIL talk and talking about Lions and quarterback, but that just goes to show you how crazy things are right now in the world of recruiting. Like Oregon's shot their shot. Now it's time to see, is it going to land? Is their pitch going to resonate with these guys? And now we're in decision mode for so many of the top targets.
Yeah, I think, basically to continue my analogy, you pretty much, chopped about 85% of the tree down. So now you're just kind of doing a little bit more, seeing which way it's going to fall, right? Hopefully you chop the right side so it falls your direction. But that's starting to feel where we're at for a good portion of the guys that we talk about regularly over on Scoop Duck.
And then the last thing I want to talk about, Justin, I'm going to tee this one up for you as the proud owner of Scoop Duck. Just talk about kind of where we're at right now with everything. Scoop Duck's popping, the message board's popping. Oregon's recruiting success may not be there just yet, but we think they're kind of on the precipice of that. And then, of course, we have the integration with Rivals becoming more and more real day by day.
Yeah, I think you teed it up well, because I think, folks are sleeping on the fact that, basically On3 is integrating with Rivals. Obviously, we don't know the final product, but they're doing it right now. So within the next 30 days or so, you get a pretty good lay of the land there. What's really cool to me is Scoop Duck's already got you and I, which, from an Oregon perspective and recruiting, can't be beat. It can't be beat. You and I do such a good job of making sure we're on top of things and checking everything once, twice, 3 times to make sure what we're saying is, accurate or as accurate as it can be. You're doing a killer job getting these guys on the phone, getting actual quotes and relaying them. We are so fortunate, though, to have all that, and then have guys like Chad Simmons and Steve Wiltfong, and then to have, hey, like if we're in a recruiting battle with a guy with Michigan, I can go ping EJ Holland, great, does a great job on the Michigan beat, and be like, hey, EJ, what are you hearing on this guy? What do you really? And we've done that enough. Now that's even more, because there's a lot of the smaller sites that Rivals has that Oregon did not. So now if I need to lean on a Utah guy, hey, what's going on with Kelvin Obot? How's Utah feeling? We've got that. That's within our network. We already have Chad Simmons and Steve Wiltfong, 2 of the best that pop in, regularly on our site. Now you're adding Adam Gorney, Sam Spiegelman. I mean, there's so many terrific guys in the Rivals Network. I think John Garcia is another one. I think you worked with him a little bit.
Greg Smith in the Midwest.
Greg Smith, yeah. So I mean, I feel like Scoop Duck's selling itself, but sometimes people just got to be reminded that's all covered in your description. Last thing, which is I haven't even talked about it yet, but I'll say it here. Apparently, we're partnered with The Athletic now, so your memberships on Scoop Duck will get you access to The Athletic. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but it's all under the same price point. So, I mean, that's just basically a freebie there for you to be able to read like Stuart Mandel and some of the great, Feldman, Bruce Feldman, legend Bruce Feldman. That's all at Scoop Duck, only at Scoop Duck. You just can't get all of those offerings anywhere else.
Right on. Well, I think that's a great note to kind of ride off into the sunset on this episode of the pod, Justin. If you guys want to find more Justin, follow him at JHopkinsSD. You can find me anywhere at mtorres sports. Also want to say that I recently created a TikTok and have been posting a lot more stuff out there, kind of some immediate reaction stuff, which has been a blast, and the reception has been awesome. So appreciate all the support there. Subscribe to the Scoop Duck On 3 YouTube channel. Come and see us at scoopduck.com. We got the Scoop Duck newsletter. We got the On 3 app, which lets you stay in touch with everything. Justin and I are sending out push notifications for the biggest Oregon stories. This is a great time to be here. And I think Oregon's going to have another special year in 2025. Almost said 26. But we got to get out of here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode of the Ducks Dish Podcast.